it's going to be an interesting subject, and I'm very excited to do it. I've been preparing it for a long time, and yeah, I hope you will all like it. So I'm going to launch the PowerPoint. Okay, can someone confirm that we can see everything clearly? Yeah, perfect, thank you. Okay, so the title of this webinar is I, Géna, 20 years old and child of a humanitarian worker. So I first want to start this webinar with a little brainstorming. It will allow you to participate in the chat. Okay, why is it not? So when you read the word humanitarian, what comes to mind? I'd like to see your answers in the chat. That will allow us to kind of see if some of the topics you will come up with will appear in this webinar. And if not, we can talk about it during the questions and answers time. So I'll let you, give you a few seconds to write your answers in the chat. Saving lives now and in the future, being there for humanity, okay. Solidarity, someone who cares about humanity to save lives, working for others, caring for others, yeah. Support people in need. Are we getting other messages? Okay, well, great. So I'm going to quickly present myself. So my name is Géna. I'm 20 years old and I am the child of a humanitarian worker. But of course, that's not all I am. I am currently in my third year in psychology at the University Lumière Lyon 2 with plans to work as a psychologist in the humanitarian sector. And I'm currently living in Lyon in France. And as mentioned by Helen, I am intern at CoCreate Humanity since January. And yeah, I'm very happy to have you here today. I hope you will like it because yeah, being the child of a humanitarian worker made it so that I have grown up in 8 different countries. And of course, we will get to that right now because this subject is interesting, as Helen said, and it's important to say why we're going to talk about it. The subject we'll be discussing is interesting because I believe that having a parent or both parents being a humanitarian is, first of all, an experience that my brother and I went through, but it's also a shared experience among a lot of other humanitarian kids. So yeah, it goes without saying that such an experience shapes an individual in terms of personality, in terms of mental health, especially at a young age, but we'll circle back to that later. And yeah, the reality is that in the recent years, a lot of studies have been done on the impact of working on the field for humanitarian workers, the impact of being away from family, the things they witness, the consequences such as post-traumatic stress disorder, the reverse cultural shock, for example, when they return from the field. And yeah, awareness is starting to be raised concerning these issues, but the focus hasn't really been on the kids and the families of these workers. And this is why this webinar will be an opportunity to share my experience and that of others. So this webinar, as we explained, will be split in half. So the first part will be for presentation and the second part will be for questions and answers.
Géna, just sorry to interrupt. On voit un rectangle noir en fait et on n'arrive pas à lire. Il y a un rectangle noir sur la slide qui est à droite. Je ne sais pas si vous voyez comme moi. Mais...
Non, moi je ne le vois pas. En tout cas, ça n'apparaît pas pour le mien.
Tu vois, Seb, le rectangle noir?
Oui, je croyais que c'était mon ordinateur qui avait... Non, je l'ai, oui.
Donc, c'est... du coup...
Est-ce que c'était sur les autres slides ou que sur celle-là?
Que sur celle-là. It's on the main screen, but we can see, you know, this black, not the squares, un rectangle noir.
Oh, okay.
We can't read.
Do you happen to have another little window open that is on top of your presentation?
Not that I am aware of.
Because I see it too.
Yeah.
Elle bouge pas, elle reste toujours là.
Ouais.
Yeah. It just covers a bit of your text. It's a bit of a pity.
It did not affect the other slides?
It did.
Si.
Oh. I am not sure how to fix that.
Est-ce que c'est pas le chat?
No.
Is it
just
still
on the right-hand side? Yeah, on the right-hand side of the screen.
Sorry for this technical problem. What I'm going to do, I'll try to, because we didn't see that when.
No, we didn't see that before.
No. Yeah.
That's not normal.
Let's see if we can do something. Maybe if you can record it as, tu peux le convertir en PDF peut-être, parce que là c'est un PowerPoint.
Yes. Yeah.
Et donc
let's do that.
Il faut l'enregistrer en PDF et puis le reprojeter à l'écran peut-être. Mais ça vient de ton ordinateur puisque là le rectangle on le voit toujours. Hein.
Ah. Okay, let me maybe stop the share and try it again.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Sorry for this technical issue.
Do we still see it?
No, it's okay now.
Okay, maybe if I try on the...
Là, maintenant, on a un autre rectangle noir.
Another one?
Yeah, I think when you open something on your screen that's on front of it, then we can see it. Then it just comes as a gray.
Yeah. What I suggest is that Christophe, if you can share it from your computer, and Géna, you will just ask Christophe to turn the slides.
Yeah, can you send it to me, because I don't actually have it.
It's sent to the address.
It's sent on the info address already, Christophe.
Yeah, but I cannot open it from there.
Okay.
It doesn't. It's blocked somehow. I cannot open it. But if you send the PDF, then that would work.
Okay.
As well.
Oops.
Christophe, is that your screen now?
No.
No, that's still mine.
Okay, I think I've been able to download it.
Thanks a lot for your patience and sorry about this technical issue.
Okay, good. So let's just try.
Okay. So yeah, we were on the 5th slide.
Yeah, let me just see if I can.
You go to the top you go to slideshow in the tool. Yeah, okay.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Okay, here we are.
Okay, so I'll just tell you when you can change slides. Sorry, everyone. So yeah, as I was saying, so the webinar will be split in two halves. In the first part, I'll mostly talk for a first part about myself, my journey, my parents as humanitarians, and the impact of that experience on my life. It's also important to talk about the pros and cons of this experience, because and the effect it has on mental health, because as a psychology student, I cannot not make a webinar and not talk about psychology a little bit. And of course, we are very fortunate to have included in this webinar a video testimony made by children of humanitarian workers. I hope the video will be able to play. And I think, yeah, it will be very interesting to see their experience because every experience is unique. So I thank Sophie, who is here with us, who helped edit the video. You can change slides. Okay, so let's go over the countries I have lived in with my family. So I was born in France, in Lyon, and my father was working at the time with ICRC in Kosovo. So from here, we can go over the countries we've lived in as a family. We mostly lived in Africa, haven't really gone over the Atlantic to North or South America. We haven't been to Asia. So I was born in France. I started kindergarten in Guinea-Conakry in 2004. I have very few memories of that time because I was only 5 years old. By that time, my mother had stopped working, so my father was the only humanitarian worker of the family. We moved back to France in Montpellier in 2006 in time for my brother Nils' birth, as you can see on the picture. And soon after that, my mother, brother, and I moved to Uganda. So we were back with my mother's side of the family. At the time, our father wasn't with us because he was on a non-family mission. After that, we moved to Jordan, where we stayed for 3 years. Until then, that was the longest we've ever stayed in a country. Then we went to Niger for about 2 years, followed by 7 months only in Sudan. The reason we only stayed a few months is because the government had requested a few humanitarian organizations to leave the country, so we had to leave, which led us to return to Uganda, where we stayed for about 3 years, and we really got to know our family better. Next slide. And then we had to leave to move to the Democratic Republic of Congo in 2016. And yeah, we had to leave what I had learned to consider my home for the first time, followed by my last year of high school in Kenya in 2018, which led me to move to France to start my degree in psychology. So yeah, as you can see, we've moved around a lot. The pictures are here to prove it. And that's what it was like having a father that was a humanitarian worker, and where we had the chance to go with him on his missions most of the time. I think his priority was really to have us have family missions as much as possible. Next slide. So my dad, so throughout his life, he has worked with Action Against Hunger, where he met my mother, but also ICRC and other organizations. And he has worked as a humanitarian for the past 30 years. Yep. And about 3 years ago, he started his own NGO, Pilotes Volontaires. I'll talk about it a bit more after. And the reasons that led my dad to start working as a humanitarian are multiple. He didn't really see himself working to sell something or to build something. As a teenager, he saw himself in a job where he could help others due to his interest in speleology, so the exploration of caves, and being a canine educator. At 13 years old, he wanted to work in the rescue of mountain climbers with the help of rescue dogs. It was only later, when he was about 23, that he went on an expedition to China with his speleology club. And among the team, he met a hydraulics engineer who did water boreholes in Algeria. So that's when he realized that that's what he wanted to do. He realized that on national territory, there would always be a supply of people to help. But abroad, that's where he could really help others in conflict areas. So the next year, he applied to the Institute of Bioforce, and a year later went for his first mission with Action Against Hunger. And today, yeah, my father created the association Pilotes Volontaires. It is a charitable NGO which does fly and rescue missions looking for refugee boats in danger on the Mediterranean Sea with the aid of an aircraft. And of course, they work in collaboration with rescue boats in the area who come and help the people aboard. And I was fortunate enough to never really get scared when he went on missions as a child. I think I never really grasped the concept, but now as I got older, I really understood that it does take a certain risk, but I'm very happy that he's in his own way making the world a better place. Next. And even though my father has been a humanitarian in the humanitarian sector longer than my mom, I still had to include her in the video because my mother worked as an accountant for the Gulu District Administration in Uganda and World Vision International. She later joined Action Against Hunger as a logistician, and she was mainly in charge of the creation of evacuation and safety procedures, but also worked on the relations with local authorities. And yeah, she stopped working after we were born, but she stayed a humanitarian at heart. And that is why I wanted to include her in the video, because being a humanitarian isn't just a job description on a CV. It's also a mindset. And she has been like that her whole life. And that is the one thing I remember about her growing up, is that she always taught us to be selfless. Next. So yeah, it comes to no surprise that this lifestyle has had an impact on different aspects of my life throughout my childhood. And as of today, I can say that it is already impacting my future. Today, I'm studying psychology. And when I decided to pursue these studies, a lot of people told me that, yeah, that's what people do when they don't really know what they want to do later in life. They study psychology. And people have a lot of presumptions about the students who choose this course. I've already heard people tell me, oh, careful, you're going to start reading my mind, or you're going to psychoanalyze me. So I find it important to explain why I wanted to start working in psychology and why in the humanitarian sector specifically. It's because when I was 12 years old, studying in Uganda, the ICRC made an intervention at school to talk about child soldiers in Uganda in link with the Lord's Resistance Army, which is an armed rebel group based in Uganda that abducted children to use as child soldiers. So yeah, these children were subject to an intense period of integration. They were retained by threats of violence, a cultivation of a very intense in-group identity, and a belief in spiritual monitoring and punishment. So once liberated, whether they escaped or they were saved, these children often display physical, psychological, and social problems. And that was the point that really struck me when they did that presentation, because as a 12-year-old, I thought to myself, these children are going to need so much help getting back to their normal life. How do you go through all of that? Because they really went into details of the lives of these children. How do you go through all that and go on with your life after that? Because sometimes your family doesn't even accept you after that. That same day, a theater dancing troupe came to school to reenact the life of a child soldier. And that's when the topic really hit my emotions. And these two events led to me today pursuing a career in psychology with the goal to work in the humanitarian sector. And with that experience of growing up abroad, it has also shaped my personality. That's why it was such a challenge for me to settle in France, knowing I would be here for at least 5 years to complete my studies, because I had started to find a routine very annoying. I couldn't go anywhere, and with COVID that had started, it forced me to stay grounded, so I couldn't travel as I used to. It was really like my rhythm was completely broken, because growing up as a teenager, going to a new country meant a new start. That means every year, every 2 years, I had the chance to reinvent myself by going to a new school. That's why I probably think people who have known me in Kenya do not know this. Géna in Kenya was not the same in Congo, for example, completely two different people. So yeah, I developed a lot of observation skills. For example, when I arrived to a new school, I wouldn't make friends on the first week. I would just observe the different friend groups and then decide where am I going to fit in. And that was my strategy every time I moved. So yeah, moving around a lot really shaped my personality and who I am today, who I aim to be. And this is why by doing this research, I came across a term that I never really knew, but I've heard of. It's the term of third culture kids. Next slide. So yeah, when kids relocate from one country to another, they become third culture kids, which means they don't really have one set culture they identify to. It's mostly a blend of cultures. And in that way, answering the question, where are you from, can become a bit complicated sometimes, because, you know, yeah, I'm in this country, but at the same time, it's not the nationality that's on my passport. So it creates a little bit of confusion, and these kids may feel isolated and helpless, disoriented also. And a lot of people also don't realize how they sound, asking questions like you can see on the PowerPoint, you grew up in Norway, do you see Vikings walking around? Do you ride a lion or a giraffe to school? Do you live in a hut? These last two questions were real questions I had gotten. But yeah, you learn to distinguish these questions and respond without taking any offense. For people who don't travel around their cities or their country's limits, of course, it's hard to grasp. It's hard to grasp your lifestyle. It's hard to understand things outside of their own little world. Next slide. So yeah, as I said, oh, no, back. Too far, no. Yes, that one. So as I said, there's a lot of benefits of living abroad, and we're going to go through a few of them, but I think it would be interesting to discuss them after in more details. First of all, we have adaptability. So of course, leaving everything behind and getting used to new surroundings requires a great deal of adaptability. Expat children usually succeed in adjusting pretty fast to their new lifestyles, because you learn to adapt to a new nation, new people. Sometimes you have to take on a new language, learn to live in a country with a different religion, a different geographic setting. And yeah, when I was in Jordan, for example, I learned how to speak Arabic. And so did my brother when he was in an Arabic speaking kindergarten. He actually, at about 3 years old, he spoke way better than all of us. And back then I would help my mother negotiate prices in the market. So yeah, we had to really quickly adapt to lifestyles and sorry. I think that is, yeah, it's one of the major benefits. Excuse me. So then we have open-mindedness. So yeah, by the very nature of life, as you relocate and adapt, as I said, to new surroundings, you take on new challenges, you meet a lot of people with different perspectives, different experiences, and depending on the education you also get from your parents, you learn to become very open-minded about people in general, and that doesn't change when you move back to your home country. It's really a quality that you will not lose. Once you are open-minded, I believe that you really stay that way. That is my personal opinion. And yeah, I became more open-minded, not because I saw a lot of countries, but also that my parents taught me that, as I said, they were also humanitarians at heart. So they helped people whether they were getting paid for it or not. Next, a sense of belonging. This one is interesting because children tend to create their own culture. And yeah, growing up, I had a small existential crisis where I didn't really know where I belonged, but you tend to live in a little community of expat children because parents know each other at work. And it's very refreshing to talk and meet with kids who also move all the time and that understand that this is not going to be a forever friendship. We're going to have a good time. And then we're 8, we don't know how to write correctly, so we may never speak again. So it does create a little sense of belonging among that community. Of course, you also learn new languages and soft skills. As I said, you can become highly adaptive across different cultures. And yeah, I think that is one of the most, one of the highlights that is often brought up when you talking about the benefits of living abroad. And lastly, of course, there's making friends from around the world. The proof is that I have friends from around the world present during this webinar. It really has an impactful, it's really an impactful experience because you make friends across language barriers sometimes. You make friends from countries you've never visited before, and these kinds of connections don't go away. They can even turn into something more. And it's important to take time to nurture these friendships and these relationships you have with people abroad, because you're connecting with people who have their own stories, their own experiences. And yeah, these friendships can last a lifetime if you allow them to. Next slide. Now the cons. This is the part where we're going to talk about everything that's wrong, but don't worry, it's going to be okay. So the obvious one is traveling often. I think that as a child, that was the most challenging part for me, moving from country to country. You have to leave friends behind. That was the hardest for me. And yeah, this nomad lifestyle, as my mom often said, also came with a lot of uncertainty. We never really knew where would we go next, how long we're going to stay in a country. Depending on the stability of the country, we could be shipped off at any moment. And yeah, the concept of separation has really been present during my childhood, and goodbye parties almost became a tradition. When you leave a country, you throw a goodbye party with all your friends. The nonsense of the no sense of belonging, sorry, it's a bit contradictory because we talked about that being a pro, but no, because finding friends can get tiresome and difficult when you're a kid. And if you go back to your home country after being away for so long, you may feel out of sync with your friends back home because of the different experience you had of life. And this is why we have the term citizens of everywhere and nowhere to qualify third culture kids. Because, yeah, as I said, answering the question, where are you from, can be anxiety inducing because you don't know. So yeah, one of the cons of living abroad so much, moving, is that you don't really know where you're from. You don't feel like you belong anywhere. Next, mental health. For me, the hardest move we had to go through was from Uganda to Congo. To give you a context, we've been in Uganda for about 3 years, surrounded by family, old friends from early years. And I had started to have a little routine. And I had starting to gain some independence. I could move around the big city a bit how I wanted to. And when we had to move to Congo, that was the first time I really felt homesick. That time, I think I cried the first few weeks every night. And entering your adolescence years, everything is very unstable mentally because you're going through a lot of changes. And I believe, even though they were never diagnosed, that would have been the first times I expressed symptoms of mild depression. And yeah, fortunately, I found others like me in Kinshasa who also didn't fit in well, and we had our own little group, and we hang on together. Yeah, because researchers have found that the impact of moving often is worse for kids over the age of 5, because that's when it's very important for your social development to be around people, to form a friend group. And yeah, younger children adapt much quicker to changes in culture and circumstances. And older kids, on the other hand, can struggle to adjust to find new friend groups, because when you arrive in a country and the friend groups have been formed for the past 5 years and you're always the new kid, it can be very challenging. And speaking of school and adapting, disrupted education is also very important. And that is, I think, one of the biggest drawbacks of moving from one country to another. There were times where we would move in the middle of the school year, but we were lucky enough to always be in the French system. So the program and like the curriculum didn't change that much. And my parents always tried to make us move at the end of a school year, never in the middle. That was only in terms of emergencies that we had to move in the middle of the year. And when we would always change schools, we would never know at what level the other kids would be at when you go to a new school. So there was always this pressure to be very good in case you had to move. That way you wouldn't fall behind when you go to a new country. Concerning unstable relationships with others, we often experience loss in that way because we're losing friends, we're losing cultural norms, and we're losing the sense of familiarity we had grown to create in our environment. So it can be hard to heal from losing those friendships. And back to the subject of goodbyes, when you have this lifestyle, you arrive in the country, as I said, new school, having to make friends. And to maintain a friendship beyond the time you stayed in the country was hard because it meant putting more effort, and sometimes people just drift apart. So it becomes easy today to just expect people to not stay long in your life. But when you can't keep those friends, these long distance friendships, they turn out to be one of the most loyal and trustworthy people you'll ever meet. And of course, I have accepted today that friendships don't always last, but the ones that do are the ones to cherish. And finally, conflict areas. Of course, we're keeping this one short, but yeah, sometimes you have to move with your family to risky areas, even though family missions are usually low risk areas. But I think I'm fortunate enough to have never witnessed any form of violence. Next slide. I came across the term child expat syndrome during my research to list a few symptoms. Of course, these are not set symptoms. These are just a few examples, because I thought it was interesting to include this term because I didn't know there was a word for it. So yeah, such symptoms of the syndrome are behavioral change. You may have trouble expressing feelings, you struggle to sleep, eating habits change, seclusion, loneliness, and disruptive behavior often can be a way to challenge parents as a child that you're not happy about moving. So your behavior changed to express how angry you are. Next slide. So yeah, the impact of expat life on mental health. I wanted to include this little quote from Dana Nelson. The tricky thing for expats is differentiating between the very normal process of cultural adjustment, which takes time and some patience, and which often resolves itself, versus difficulties adjusting that don't seem to be getting better over time and where suffering is taking a toll in other areas of life and so requires attention. I thought it was very important to include this quote because we talked a lot about the cons, but those cons are not cons for everyone. It's a bit hard to explain, but lists of symptoms, let's say, traveling often can be seen as a con, but for some people who crave new adventures constantly, they will always see it as a benefit. So it's important to not generalize symptoms to everyone because it becomes a symptom, I would say, when it has an impact on your daily life and your normal behavior. Next. So what can we do to support third culture kids? Normalizing conversations about mental health. This is something, it's one of the reasons why I want to be a psychologist, because the subject of mental health, I don't even know how I got to know about it because I feel like it was not discussed a lot around me. But yeah, a lot of people, when you have a physical issue, my back hurts, I feel nauseous this morning, you talk about it. But why is it so difficult to do that when it comes to mental health? It's because it's, of course, an uncomfortable subject. We don't talk about things openly, and that way we're teaching our minds and bodies that these topics aren't appropriate to talk about. And this results in our bodies reacting as if you're always in a dangerous situation, inducing anxiety and stress. And by normalizing these conversations around mental health, you're opening the gate to welcome these kids, these teenagers, to let you know when something doesn't feel right in the exact same way they would tell you if their stomach hurts or if their head hurts. That's why I think it's very important to normalize and open up conversations about mental health within the family, because of course, kids among themselves so often talks in friend groups, but it all starts with the family. And that is something I try to do with my family, with my younger cousins, because I want them to know that their mental health is very important. And yeah, today's world contains so many distractions from relationships between parents and kids, whether it's work or social media, that it's important for your kids to have face-to-face connections with your parents. And that is what really helped me growing up. We had less social media growing up, that's for sure. Not saying it's a bad thing, but yeah, I there was always family weekends, organized family time. And I think that is very important to make sure your child, even though everything is so unstable, you're always moving, you never know how long you're staying, so they can still have this sense of everything is stable at home, this balance. Next slide. Another side, let's say the dark side of expat child, is that you have two types: the ones who end up very open-minded and the ones that will have a sense of privilege, but in the wrong way. I wanted to include this quote from this article written by Eva Meslin Tiem. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right. So I'll quickly read it to you. During 3 years in Africa, their clothes always magically reappeared in their closets, ironed and folded military style. All toothpaste gunk almost instantly vanished from their sinks, and putting their dirty plates in the general vicinity of the kitchen was the only effort asked for them after meals. So yeah, this is interesting because it is true that a lot of us have grown up in a little pampered style. Fortunately at home, my mother always made sure we did our chores. But it's true that a lot of kids grew up in a certain lifestyle, and when they're on their own or back home, it's not the same. They have to do things themselves, and they feel very disoriented. And yeah, they have developed a sense of privilege because of that lifestyle. So yeah, it can be very eye-opening sometimes because it makes you realize how privileged you are when you are in other countries. But it's important to acknowledge it, but not to let it get to your head and let it impact your development as an individual who will not always be living the expat life. Next. So now is the interesting part of the video. So to make this webinar more interesting and inclusive, it was my pleasure to work with children of humanitarian workers. I have not seen who has been added after, but I'm hoping some of them are here today. So yeah, before we watch this video, I want to thank Sophie, who's here with us, for editing this video. We have worked on it for the past 3 weeks, something like that. And of course, our 3 participants. So we have Ayman Fadil, who's studying economics and political science at the University of Ottawa. Lucien Anglade, I'm saying it in French, who's doing his European degree in political science in Lille, in France, and Chelika Kochani, who's a dental assistant and pursuing studies in dentistry. And I'm very happy that they agreed to share their experience. We're going to see how we're going to launch this video. Maybe it will work if I share my screen again. We could try that, Christophe.
Yes, sure, you can do that.
Yep.
I will stop my share and I'll you go ahead and share.
Let's try that. Okay, let me. All right, it should appear. Is it visible? Yeah. You don't have the black screen around? Okay. I'm going to launch the sound. Just someone confirm thumbs up if it sounds.
I consider having my dad in the humanitarian sector as
Perfect.
a gift.
It wasn't always easy, but there were some perks.
I can honestly say that I wouldn't have had it any other way. Hello, my name is Ayman Fadil. I'm 18 years old and I'm currently studying economics and political science here at the University of Ottawa in Canada.
Hi everyone, my name is Chideka Kochani and I am 22 years old. I am a dental assistant who lives in Canada.
Hello to everybody, my name is Lucien. I'm 19 years old. I'm French and Mozambican and I'm currently living in Lille for my studies. I'm studying my first year of political sciences. My dad is a head of mission at Médecins Sans Frontières, and if I were to sum up his job, he's basically managing the projects led by MSF in the countries he works in.
My father works with the United Nations. He's worked with the UN for the past 20 years, and he's currently with UNICEF. So he's worked with UNICEF in Sudan for the past 5 years, and he'll hopefully be moving to Pakistan soon to continue his work.
My father was a former humanitarian worker, and as a result, we had to move a lot from country to country about every 3 years.
I've personally lived in 6 countries, being Canada, the country I was born in, the United States, Palestine, Jordan, Yemen, and the last country that I lived in being Sudan, which I lived in for 5 years.
I was born in Angola, and 3 months later, I think I moved to Mozambique. Then I lived in Ethiopia, I went to Japan, I went to France, I lived in Mozambique again, I lived in Uganda, and lastly, I lived in the Philippines as well.
We started first in Gambia, then we were sent to Uganda, Ethiopia, Cameroon, and then Burundi. But unfortunately, due to issues in Burundi politically, we had to be moved back to Uganda. Challenges were much more oriented towards the fact that my dad was absent, towards the fact that I had to move to a new place about every 3 years. I didn't really have a say whether I could stay or not, and it was hard to maintain those friendships because I was still young and I didn't have the means to. I was constantly trying to adapt to all the challenges that came with this new environment, yet trying to process what had happened in the previous environment sometimes. So it wasn't always easy to move forward, to create new friendships, because I got so used to the idea of those friendships not lasting because I would move. So I got desensitized to really forming long-lasting relationships and actually even seeing through after I moved, keeping contact.
Moving around so much, especially at a young age, it can oftentimes be very tough on you as a person. It can be very challenging because it can feel like you don't have a proper sense of stability, a proper foundation, or like a set of friends that have stuck with you throughout your adolescence. And so it can oftentimes feel very disruptive. And so understandably, me and my siblings were very upset at certain times where we had to move to a new country. We'd be sobbing to our parents, telling them that we want to stay with our friends.
An issue that came with having a humanitarian background was getting to witness conflict firsthand, which I did in Burundi, and it left quite a mark on me. And fortunately, I am working through it in therapy, but unfortunately, it was hard to handle back then when it happened.
Although I remember being very sad about leaving my friends behind when I was a kid, I kind of grew to like the lifestyle. It really offered me the chance to discover different cultures, different foods, languages, to see amazing sights. And through that, I feel like I gained a very open mind and a different insight on life in general.
Getting to see new places, experience a new culture, getting to meet new people, access to more resources, better resources, because the UN used to support a lot of families through school and things like that.
Being able to live in all of the beautiful countries that we've been able to live in, meet all of the beautiful people that we've been able to meet, lifelong friends that I've made, being able to visit neighboring countries, all of the very enriching experiences that we've had. I'm really thankful for that because, not that many people have that opportunity.
Knowing that there's a person in your life that contributes really dearly to the impact of making the world better and getting to get those benefits, like going to better school and getting to be more knowledgeable because they are so knowledgeable, is something that I greatly enjoyed.
I think it gave me my outgoing, curious, and carefree personality traits. It also obviously shaped what I wanted to study and do later on in my life.
I can definitely say that the benefits outweigh the negatives 100-fold.
Yes, it's rough sometimes, but there's a lot of good, and life is all about focusing on that good and making the best out of what we have.
Honestly, I would be lying if I said I did not want to live a similar lifestyle as my dad's. It's kind of what I'm aiming for, and I'm very grateful and thankful.
All of the beautiful memories that I've gained over the years, all of the experiences that I've gained, the growth that I've been able to experience. I just feel like I'm a far more understanding, open-minded, and aware human being because of them. Honestly, the experiences have just all in all been amazing, and that's all I can really say. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day. Bye.
All right. that was a good video. First off, we can go back to the PowerPoint for the last few slides.
I don't know where Christophe is.
Yep. There we go. Okay, we can go to the next slide. That was I was very happy to do this video. Because yeah, it was interesting because I did not give them any specific thing to talk about. I just gave them a few guideline questions. And what was interesting is that our experiences are really merged. The topics I talked about earlier in the presentation, so the pros, the cons, they really came up naturally to them. It really shows that we don't know each other. For example, Ayman, I've never met him. I know him through someone else, and we have such the same view, the same way we look back at our experience. And yeah, that is really interesting. A few resources I wanted to include, of course, what we talked about, the expect child sense of privilege, that article. This is the reference in case you want to look that up. A documentary, Égoïste, 40 humanitaires et leurs proches se livrent sans détour, a documentary by Stéphane Santini, Geraldine André, and told by Lambert Wilson. I also found this other document, Family Matters Self-Care for Families of Members of Humanitarian Workers. It's an online training module by Lisa McCain. I have it with me in the PDF form, so if anyone is interested, feel free to let me know. I can send it to you. And the documentary by Gabor Maté, Wisdom of Trauma, that came out recently in 2021. So yeah, these are resources I think are interesting to add on to this webinar. It's always interesting to cite sources. That's what I've learned in university. And I think, yeah, I didn't really have a way to conclude this webinar, to be honest, but I'm very happy that everything went well. And the topic, as I said, has really shaped my experience, the one of others. And yeah, looking back, as they said, I would have not changed anything. I'm very happy to have had this experience because I'm happy with the person I am and the person I want to become. And it would have not been possible without what my father did and the education my parents gave me. And I will forever be grateful for that. And I will continue to contribute by not only working in the humanitarian sector, but in the sector of mental health, which is a subject that I connect with a lot, that I don't only want to share through my job, but also through my relationships with others, with my family. As I said, let's open up the discussion about mental health. It's okay to feel things. That's how humans were designed. And we need to be accepting of others' emotions because that's how we work as a community. And next slide. Next slide. Yep.
I'm trying to.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Yeah, so as I said, thank you. Thank you a lot for listening. I hope this presentation has raised questions, has raised interrogations, was interesting, first of all. That would be a good start. And I'm very happy to have presented this subject to you. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Géna, for this fantastic webinar. It was really interesting for all of us, and the video was really, really great. I'm sure you will have some question in the second part of this webinar. So this is now 6:55. We will have a 10 minutes break. So you please come back in 10 minutes at 7:05. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and you will have almost 1 hour to discuss with Géna and with all of us. So stretch well, have something to drink, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thanks a lot.